Hey, what's up guys? This is Snicked back with another Royal Revolt 2 base review. Thanks for joining me. In today's base review, we're going to be looking at the base that belongs to Bart de Poivre. Bart, I probably completely butchered your last name there. I'm sorry about that, but in-game he's known as Brakaflacka. Currently ranked at 9,443 on the global leaderboard with 2,144 trophies. I would describe Bart's base as a kind of late early level to entry mid-level base in terms of its sophistication. If I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 100 of the active users in Royal Revolt 2, I'd probably put it right around maybe the 35th to 40th percentile, just to give you an idea. But Bart's base is very interesting. It's still early level, again, but there's a lot of things that are going right here that he's doing a great job of, and I would imagine that at level it's probably a fairly difficult base. I'm noticing some things here where it's clear that he's kind of studied a little bit what other people are doing and taking some of the better ideas and implementing them on his own base. So it's great to see that. We'll get more into detail and do kind of a full teardown of the layout here in just a second. But first I want to have a look at the wave composition. So those are the troops that Bart is using and bringing out to defend the base, and then also at his defensive structures as well. So at this point in the game, 2,144 trophies, definitely hasn't entirely upgraded his castle gate. It's not a 27 tile base. But at this level in the game, at this stage in the upgrade progression and the leveling cycle, the Paladin is your best all-around troop type, just because of the it's the most durable troop type at this point in the game by far in terms of its hit points. You've had it longer, and so it's been upgraded more actively, certainly than say the Pyromancer or the Arblaster, and ultimately it is superior to the Knight, and it has a lot of blunt damage output. So with all of that said, it's great to see that figures first here in the wave composition. Secondly, actually 2, 3, and 4, we have range DPS. So Bart's base does have a lot of range DPS, which is good to see that there's a significant element of that, but also good to see that that's not his entire wave composition, for reasons that we'll get into here in a moment. But the Pyromancer is also, ultimately, it has the same number of hit points as the Paladin does at max level, 2,870 hit points. So it is, along with the Paladin, kind of the tankiest troop type in the game, aside from the hero, of course. So it's good to see that as well. And between the two of them, they actually, there's a lot of hit points between them, which has the beneficial effect of slowing down the raid overall, because it gives the hero a lot more to deal with and gives the raiding party a lot more to deal with, because before they can move on to the next wave, the next blockade, the next tower, etc. Frosters, it looks like there's certainly more than one Froster per wave here, and Bart, I'd like to hear your thinking on that. I don't necessarily know that that's beneficial at this point, because the primary benefit of having the Froster in at all is really the slow effect that they deal out, which has a really beneficial cumulative effect of substantially slowing down the raider and the raiding party. But they deal out a very nominal amount of ice damage, and so it isn't necessarily a bad thing to have more than one, because one Froster is attacking the hero, another Froster is attacking, parts of the raiding party, etc. So it's not entirely redundant to have more than one Froster, but I don't know that it's probably the best use of your morale points, especially when there are you probably have relatively few morale points at this point in your leveling progression. So you may consider reducing that to one Froster per wave, but if there's a reason that you think it's beneficial, again, I'd love to hear what you think that is. And then, of course, Arblasters and then Knights as well. And it's good to see the Knights because, as I was just mentioning, kind of extolling the the benefits or the virtues of having Paladins, players that are at level right around this trophy level, or probably this hero level, are going to primarily be using Paladins and bringing Paladins into their raids. So it's good to have some Knights out there, because the Knights deal out normal damage, which Paladins are susceptible to. They have a weakness to the normal damage that only Knights deal out. So it's good to have that. Bladestorm, of course, deals it out as well, but that comes a little bit later. Then moving on to the defensive structures, looks like 7 blockades. They're all blockades, no barricades. I won't say it's too early to have all blockades, but it is good to see that the barricades are being phased out, because blockades do get expensive and the upgrade cycle is time consuming. So it's good to see that Bart's getting a jump on that sooner rather than later. But I hopefully there aren't any blockade or barricades that are kind of in storage that maybe are more powerful at this point than the blockades are. But moving on from that, we have bomb towers, firebolt towers, gargoyle, and archer towers. So a wide representation of different tower types here. The firebolt tower indicates, and I am looking at over it his layout. There's definitely two places where a firebolt tower would be really useful, and those are probably the places where he has them. But the bomb tower is probably the best all-around tower before you get to the firebolt tower. And then, I mean, a series of bomb towers kind of in a clustered area with, bombs flying at you. They're easy to deflect, but they can be really powerful and deal out a lot of damage and a lot of splash damage. So not just to a single target, the way that, say, an archer tower does, but it can be really devastating to a group of troops that you're bringing up in your raiding party. So good to see those. Firebolt towers, as I had said, there are probably 2 here, and we'll get into that in just a second. Then gargoyle and archer towers. Gargoyle tower, there really isn't a whole lot of benefit to having them. The splash damage is minimal. The fire damage that they deal out is next to nothing, and they have no range whatsoever. So they do tank a little bit well. They have a good amount of hit points for the point in the game where they're unlocked, and it takes a lot of blunt damage to bring them down. So in that sense, they're beneficial, and they're beneficial for slowing the party down. But now that you're bringing along firebolt towers, and I'm sure you're thinking about this as well, so I'm not telling you anything you don't really know, but I would look at phasing out those gargoyle towers as soon as possible, and then the archer towers as well. So moving into the actual layout itself really quickly, or as quick as I can. After the starting at the 10 at the very bottom, we come up and there's a hard right turn. So this is a little bit of a choke point here. We have 1 blockade, and then up and to the left across that gap we have what I'm presuming to be a firebolt tower. And so at Bart's level, having a firebolt tower that's level 2, level 3 would be great, because the only troop types that are able to attack this tower across that gap are the cannon and the Arblaster. The cannon and the Arblaster are more advanced troop types that probably haven't been upgraded very much, if at all, by individuals that are coming in to raid. So having that firebolt tower and upgrading it just a little bit could be exceptionally damaging and really effective at suppressing kind of the raiding party really before it even gets started, because there's so little space there to build up an army and to move through there. So what ends up happening is if that tower is laying down some really effective fire, then it can force the hero to move on and go through and forward into the base, effectively soloing it before they get back around to attack. We also have of course have the path coming down from the gate at that point, and so ranged DPS can potentially camp out there as well and attack the raiding party as it comes through. As we go out and around, not a whole lot going on here. It's a pretty open space. That's a place where, if you've suffered any damage kind of there at the opening, you can regain it here, which isn't good from a defensive perspective. And I'll have more to say on this space down here in a moment. But across from it, we have this long parallel path. So benefits there are benefits and drawbacks to having this, and you'll notice as you get into higher level gameplay that there aren't long parallel paths like this. They're not in high supply, and the reasons for that are a couple. One is that it is possible from the defender's perspective that a raider can come in, and if there's ranged DPS, it gives them a great opportunity to hit the raider and the raiding party throughout this this overlap or this parallel path. But if a sword rain is brought into the raid, then it's commensurate with the level of your troops or higher, then it can one-shot the pyromancers, arblasters, and frosters that you have here. So that's a negative kind of in mid-level gameplay. in higher level gameplay, it's it's not necessarily a problem because it's possible to upgrade and field waves that can withstand a sword rain. However, you basically just get into a place where it's all path and very little tower. The towers are out around the periphery and take kind of a secondary distant role in the defense, and so you're really relying on your ranged DPS to do all the heavy lifting, which isn't ultimately a good idea. And so you'll probably find as you go along that you gravitate away from having lots of parallel path, but right now it does have its benefits. So getting up into this first hairpin turn, or this 180-degree turn, what I'll point out here is after the spike pad and the blockade, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and it doesn't look like it, you have a little bit of a gap, but over on the left side as well, kind of right in the middle of the base, you basically have a pretty significant cluster of towers here, and we'll see how this works out in practice in just a moment. But I'm relatively certain that even at an early level with either Firestorm or Hammer Strike, potentially Blizzard, that a raider can come in and probably take out multiple of these towers kind of in one go or on one cooldown. And you have to remember that Hammer Strike has a very short cooldown at 7 seconds. And so it's important to remember that as a raider is working through this, even if they have just Hammer Strike, which of course is the first spell you unlock in the game, they can probably deal out multiple of those in pretty quick succession and take out most of these towers. So there's a little bit of a clustering problem here. What I would suggest very quickly is taking one of the towers, probably the middle tower that's at the top of the hairpin turn there, and then moving it down, just straight down to the bottom, or right around there, in the second turn, and in order to and then you can spread out the towers that are up around this hairpin turn a little bit, because you do have a cluster problem, which if somebody's bringing in a spell or two is going to be able to take out a substantial portion of your overall defensive strength right there. So it's always tempting to do this because it seems like you're really bombarding the player, but if the player is able to get up in there with spells and a cooldown ready, then it ends up turning against you really fast. So going out and around and down, we have right in the middle of the base, we have 2 blockades. I would actually move the top blockade down 1 space, take the other blockade and move it down over to the second turn where I just suggested moving your tower. Once we get past this, we go up and around, we have another hairpin turn. There's a great opportunity there for another Firebolt tower, which is probably what he has. And then finally we get into the gate itself. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and go in and attack the base. So what we'll first be watching for here is how things go right here at this choke point. So we have our blockade. It is a Firebolt tower. What I am noticing is that there aren't any defensive, there isn't any range DPS there to greet me along with the tower. So once the blockade's taken down, that's kind of an omission there where I would look at probably doing something with the timing of your waves. You might have to move that choke point up and change your base design just a little bit so that a wave can get there more quickly, or a second wave can get down there more quickly. But what I'm noticing here with your waves, I want to point out, is that you do have a pretty representative wave composition, so it's going to be really difficult to kind of one-shot any waves that are all range DPS, for example. And so having some Paladins mixed in there as well is very important. So this, there's no good way to put it, is kind of, as I was mentioning, a no-no. We have 2 towers right next to one another here, and then 2 more towers over here. Not doing a really great job of showing you how it can be done, but one could potentially run through there with 2 Hammer Strikes, a Firestorm, or you're not really going to encounter a Sonic Blast at this point, but a little later on, if somebody came in with even like a level 1 Sonic Blast, they would probably be able to take out all 3 or 4 of those at once. And so I would definitely, as I had said a moment ago, spread those out. 2 bomb towers here with a blockade in the middle, really good to see. And again, this is a great example. We have an Arblaster, a Pyromancer, 3 Paladins, and a Knight. Great representative wave composition, not able to really sword rain them and bring them down kind of in one fell swoop. So overall, Bart, a really great base. I do like the design a lot. The Firebolt tower placement is good. I would just be advised of the recommendations I made, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.